For every interesting, beloved, and well-written character in the Transformers franchise, there is someone on the other end of the spectrum. Whether they have an annoying voice and personality, are terribly written to the point that they're completely one-dimensional, or are any one of a plethora of reasons that makes you probably want to kill them with fire every time they show up on screen. However, the 10 characters on this list are so terribly written, so pointless, so completely and fundamentally broken, that they have next to no redeeming qualities, and that makes you wonder as to why these characters were even designed in the first place. There aren't that many conditions for a character to appear on this list, however I won't be including any characters that are those that people love to hate. For example, while I despise characters like Tarantus and Shockwave due to their twisted and cruel nature, I still give them credit due to the way they're written, being that they do their job as villains rather well, and that I hate them for all the right reasons. So, with that out of the way, sit back, relax, and let the games begin. Oh, and you might need a strong drink to help you cope with some of the more extreme characters. Everyone comfortable? Good. Let's get started.
Let's transform!
Transformers Prime deserves a fair amount of praise for making a cast of well-written characters, the creepiest version of Soundwave ever designed, and actually creating human characters that aren't a drain on the story. However, there is one character that stands out like a sore thumb against this almost perfect cast, and that is June Darby. I find it pretty funny how the most mature member of the cast is possibly the most annoying. June is the mother of Jack Darby, and it's established pretty early on that the two of them are pretty much the only family the other has. And while this can be used to set up some pretty heartwarming scenes later down the line, especially in the later half of Season 2 and the majority of Season 3, in the early half of the series, however, this wasn't the case. From the moment of her first appearance, June was established as a loving, yet overprotective mother to her teenage son, and this naturally created conflict. When I said that she was overprotective, I meant it. As soon as she realises what her son and his friends are really up to, she immediately steps in and tries to cut them off from the world of the Transformers. When things started to get serious, when Mech and Unicron began entering the picture, she took every opportunity she could to berate the Autobots for not doing more to protect the children, and even tried to further isolate them, because apparently she thought she could do a better job of protecting her son than the giant alien robots that can quite literally shrug off most kinds of bullets. I can understand her concern and protectiveness, but she takes it to such extremes that it becomes more annoying and obstructive rather than helpful. Granted, we can see that she does love her son very dearly, and that we can clearly see the closeness of their relationship, but this behaviour detracts from that and just makes it seem like she's creating unnecessary conflict. However, like I said earlier, she does get better towards the later seasons of Transformers Prime, losing her overbearing nature and begins to trust the Autobots more. And that is what ultimately keeps her from being any higher.
Let's transform!
Weird PS1 CGI graphics aside, Beast Wars was pretty good, if you ignore a few of the slightly more neat plot elements. And it did give us some pretty good characters, such as Dinobot and Rhinox. However, it was also the series that Hasbro introduced to Waspinator, and we wish they hadn't, almost immediately. Where to start with this guy? How about his voice? Waspinator's voice is incredibly grating to listen to, sounding like there's an entire colony of bees buzzing inside your head every time he opens his mouth. His speech pattern also sounds like your stereotypical dim-witted idiot mixed with a healthy dose of Hulk speak for good measure, referring to himself in the third person, giving everyone stupid nicknames like Birdbot and Catbot, referring to humans as fleshy bots, being that he's seemingly too stupid to understand that they're a completely different species, and he has his annoying speech impediment where he drags out the letter Z. Does Waspinator's voice annoy fleshy bots? Yeah, that's not going to get old at all. Naturally, as you'd expect from his annoying as fuck speech pattern, Waspinator is basically Beast Wars' version of the butt monkey and the idiot amongst the villains. On the surface, that wouldn't be too big of a problem, but Beast Wars takes it to such an extreme with Waspinator that it seems like the entire universe is against the guy, meaning that he went through a hefty dose of flanderization as the series went on. He managed to put up a decent fight in some of his early appearances, but as the series continued, it seemed as though the writers were obsessed with humiliating the poor guy in increasingly painful ways. This joke eventually came to the point that it became almost cringeworthy and overused to such an extent that you almost start to feel sorry for the little bugger. And given how annoying and whiny he is, that's not something I want to be doing. Well, you could make the same arguments against Ransack and Crumplezone and Transformers Cybertron, but those guys were actually funny, and their comedy came from how the rest of the world reacted to them rather than them reacting to the rest of the world, which is the case with Waspinator. But most of all, those guys weren't abused to the point where it became tiresome and tedious, and given how they kind of deserved it, you didn't feel any kind of sympathy towards them. It's honestly embarrassing that this guy came from one of the best cartoons in the 1990s.
Let's transform!
While the original Transformers Generation 1 cartoon still holds up pretty well, you can't ignore the problems that it did have, and it's clear in places that time hasn't been kind to it. Especially when you take a look at the size of the cast and realise just how insanely large it was. Certain characters appeared and disappeared at alarming frequency, characters only showed up in episodes when their skills were needed, poor C-Spray, and some just literally served no purpose in the overarching story whatsoever due to it being so overambitious. And then there's Wheelie. Waspinator, I take it all back, buddy, your voice is like sweet soothing music compared to this guy. This guy's voice is so scratchy and painful to listen to that all the auto-tuning software in the multiverse couldn't save it from causing your ears to bleed. And he speaks in rhyme. Everything Wheelie says has to rhyme. Why? Because Hasbro are dicks, I guess. While rookie characters are nothing new to the Transformers mythos, Wheelie takes it a step further by being a literal child. Never mind the fact that he's supposed to be a survival expert, that's only barely touched upon a few times in his backstory, and the rest of his time is spent with having a childlike mindset having practically no contribution to the rest of the narrative. Most characters like this would eventually go through some kind of development in order to make them anything less than useless, but Wheelie doesn't. He has literally no combat abilities whatsoever, despite being a sort of survival expert, and he just seems like dead weight that the rest of the Autobots have to drag around with them wherever they go. Even Perceptor, freaking Perceptor, a scientist that turns into a freaking microscope, is a better fighter than Wheelie. But what cements Wheelie on this list is just how negatively received the character was. Go on any Transformers poll about the most annoying characters in Transformers history, and Wheelie will most certainly end up in the top 3, if not ending up as number 1. Needless to say, not many people are pretty happy to see this guy come back in Revenge of the Fallen.
Let's transform!
Oh god, what went wrong with Transformers Energon? 2004 was a pretty dark time for Transformers. Armada had finished a year and a half ago, the comics were working overtime to fill in a bunch of plot holes, and given how fans enjoyed the later half of Armada and hoping that the sequel series would have the same ideals and wouldn't be rushed out and would give us a story that gave these diverse characters justice. And then Energon came out and royally fucked everything up. I'll go into the many problems that this series had at a later time. Seriously, it's a 51 episode series that runs out of plot 20 episodes in, completely ignores character development and interesting character arcs, and has CGI characters that were physically incapable of showing any kind of emotion. So much so they had to resort to traditional cel-shaded animation for some scenes. But the worst part of Energon is what they did to the characters. Starscream and Demolisher were completely ruined by brainwashing. Rodimus started out as being pretty interesting, only to get completely whitewashed later on. Do not get me started on Shockwave, Shock Blast, whatever he's calling himself now. But the worst character interpretation from this mess of a series is Ironhide. Remember how in the other video that I said we don't talk about this one? Well, this time I have to, and it's not something I'm looking forward to doing. Remember how in G1 Ironhide was one of the oldest Autobots and most badass warriors in the Transformers mythos? Well, Energon decided to completely ignore this and make Ironhide into a whiny and inexperienced rookie. Normally I'd be fine with this, it'd be interesting to see where characters like Ironhide got their start in life. But when you destroy everything about the character at the extent of creating a rookie character to balance out the status quo, I think you may need to go back to the drawing board. Ironhide is a pretty static character in a series of static characters, in that he starts out as a whiny, annoying prick who doesn't think things through and says things at inappropriate times, and ends up as a whiny, annoying prick who doesn't think things through and says things at inappropriate times. Aside from the redeco that's supposedly a power boost, he gets little to no development throughout the whole series. While he does begin to shut up a bit as the series goes on, eventually leading him to becoming a valued member of the team towards the end. But that's more due to the rest of the Autobots beginning to tolerate him a bit more instead of him going through any kind of development. Wrap this up with a voice that manages to be both incredibly whiny and high-pitched, and yet somehow a deadpan delivery at the same time, and you have a pretty abysmal interpretation of a beloved character.
Let's transform!
I really don't want to have to talk about this one. As a sequel series to Transformers Prime, Robots in Disguise is pretty lukewarm. But once you separate it from its predecessor and let it stand on its own, it actually ends up being a pretty solid series. Sure, it's more lighthearted than Transformers Prime, but that actually works in its favour for the buddy cop style that the show is going for. The basic idea is that a prison ship crashed on Earth, releasing a ton of captured Decepticons all over the place, forcing a ragtag team of misfits led by Bumblebee to track them down and recapture them. Most of these Decepticons are pretty interesting, being each of them is based off a particular criminal archetype. There's the Anarchist Quillfire, the Master Thief Filch, Mob Boss Thunderhoof, and one-man heist crew Chop Shop, who's fucking British. Yes! However, there is one character whose creation I seriously question, and just seems completely out of place. And that is Springload. Sweet Jesus, is this guy a terrible character. Springload combines the character tropes of the treasure hunter and the deluded psychopath. If that sounds like a bad idea, it's because it is. Springload is obsessed with finding the mythical city of Doradus, basically the Transformers version of Atlantis, so much so to the point that he believes himself to be on a mission to find the non-existent city, and this mission was given to him by the spirits of an ancient Cybertronian civilization. This devolved into a delusion in that only he is worthy to find the city, believing that everyone is either there to slow him down or guide him on his quest, and he is so deluded and insane that he believed himself to still be on Cybertron. This pretty much makes him the most extreme example of a one-joke character, and it's handled extremely poorly. He has next to no characterization outside of his delusion, and pretty much every word out of his mouth is either Doradus, Spirits, or Worthy. I would say that the only redeeming quality he has is that he only showed up for one episode early on in the series, but they actually brought him back for a nonsensical plot in a later episode, forcing us to sit through another 20 minutes of this idiot.
Let's transform!
Oh god, why does Snowcat exist? Yep, it's time to talk about another character from Transformers Energon. Yeah, I'm not exactly done with this animated atrocity just yet. Heh, missed to enter reference. There goes all my credibility points. Oy. Unlike other characters that were ruined by Energon, Snowcat started off terrible and just became worse. Throughout Armada and the early parts of Energon, Snowcat was known as Cyclonus, and admittedly wasn't all that bad in that form. Although he was extremely bland character-wise, nothing too special, but I can put up with this. But then he gets reformatted partway into the series, and that's the point the production team clearly had a brain fart when it came to his redesign. For a start, Snowcat's design just seems completely pointless. Cyclonus had a helicopter alt mode, so naturally his upgrade would have a similar kind of air vehicle, but nope. Snowcat's vehicle form is an Arctic truck. But that's not all. He also gets skis, and shoulder-mounted cryocans that are only used once. And he also picks up a yodeling habit. I'm sorry, what? Hasbro, did you literally run out of ideas when designing this guy or something? It just seems like you got a ton of bargain basement, bottom of the barrel ideas that would never work, smushed them all together into one character and called it a day. Why would you take away his flight abilities and make him a truck? The general idea of an upgrade is that you get more powerful. I suppose he has ice powers now, but he hardly ever uses them. Snowcat also seems to be much stupider than his previous self, always showing him making stupid decisions and seemingly losing his knowledge of a lot of things which he definitely should be aware of. This intelligence drop also affected his voice, making him sound more high-pitched and scratchy than before, and that, coupled with his stupidity, just made him a drain on whatever little plot the series had. And seeing his idiocy was shown into every episode, this means that you're going to end up getting increasingly fed up with him as the series goes on, most likely due to the cringe-worthy scenes he shares with the equally dim-witted partner Demolisher. Makes you wonder why Megatron keeps this idiot around. He shot Six-Shot in the face, and he was both an idiot and a traitor.
Let's transform!
Beast Machines is interesting. It wasn't too bad, could have been better in some places, it had a stupid environmental message, but it at least gave us a satisfying conclusion to the story of the characters from Beast Wars. Naturally, as you'd expect, new characters are introduced into the series, and Beast Machines has too. The first of these was Botanica, and she was a rather interesting concept, being that her alternate mode was some kind of sentient plant thing. And she was a pretty solid character for the most part. The other of these was Nightstream, and he was, oh sweet Jesus, kill it with fire! Normally I'd ignore character designs, but Beast Machines' CGI has aged pretty badly. Characters like Optimus and Cheeto don't look too bad, but Rat Trap, Megatron and Thrust just look like they were lifted from PS1 games. And then we have those like Nightstream. His design is ugly, it actually hurts my eyes to look at it for too long, and is that hair? Hasbro, what the hell? His Bat alt mode doesn't look that much better due to the weird neon blue decals in various places and the extremely weird mouth movements. In fact, this guy looks like the love child of Metaton and Girahim. God damn it, I just spawned a ton of disturbing fan, didn't I? No! In terms of character, Nightscream is basically your average emo teen character, except in Transformers. Yeah, not exactly the most thrilling and beloved character type out there. Nightscream's only purpose is again to fill the role of the rookie and tag-along kid, given how Cheetah has matured in the years between Beast Wars and Beast Machines. However, Nightscream takes it one step further by taking every opportunity to berate the other cast members or disobey orders, and he generally acts like he's better than everyone. Yes, Nightscream, we get that you know your way around Cybertron, you know how things work around here thanks to Megatron taking over. But do you really think that you can think of better plans and ideas than the well-trained soldiers that are used to these kind of enemy tactics? Naturally, Nightscream's stubbornness leads to him getting well over his head, forcing the other characters to have to rescue him. He then proceeds to act like an ungrateful little bitch, complaining to the others that he had the situation under control. These guys just saved your ass, you little prick. The least you can do is simply say thank you. Oh wait, you're just there to create unneeded and pointless conflict. Never mind the fact that the tension between Optimus and Cheetah was a much more believable and well-written conflict between the main cast. Kinda glad that this guy's never been seen since.
Let's transform!
This is possibly the only time that I'll ever agree with March Mojo on pretty much anything. But we should never be able to name the Black Transformers. Yep, number 3 is Skids and Mudflap, aka the Twins, aka those annoying little bastards that got way too much screen time in Revenge of the Fallen. There's no gentle way to say this. These guys are black stereotypes. They use all kinds of weird slang terms, speak in mock-up African-American style accents that are cringeworthy to listen to, only care about one-upping the other, and generally act like a pair of idiotic, annoying kids that you're forced to look after. Design-wise, these guys just look really ugly. When you compare them to the other characters introduced in the film, they just look out of place. Sideswipe looks like a pretty streamlined and speedy Swordfire, Demolisher and Devastator look like mechanical kaiju, and Jetfire looks like a battle-hardened, wise old warrior. But these two just look like someone jerry-rigged a bunch of scrap metal and spare parts together, what with the oversized arms, stumpy legs, and rotund bodies. But it's their faces that are possibly just the worst thing about their designs. Mudflap's face is like it was melted and later sat on, and Skids looks like, oh god, is that a gold tooth? Nightstream looks like a beauty pageant when compared to this guy. Throughout the majority of the film, these guys engage in constant bickering and squabbling at various points, and at some points this even devolves into physical violence between the two. It was most likely intended as comedy, but it just devolves into pointless sibling rivalry which takes away from the action of the rest of the story, and just ends up getting cringeworthy. The two of them also act extremely immature in whatever scene they're in. They have combat experience, sure, but in their first fight they completely botch up the entire thing, forcing the others to clean up their mess. And in their other fight, that does go well at first, until Mudflap shoots his brother in the face. What makes it worse is that these guys have so much screen time and steal the spotlight away from much more deserving cast members. Why couldn't Sideswipe have tagged along? Or Jolt? It's not like he's doing anything better anyway. And the fact that these two literally do not shut up throughout every scene they're shoved into, and you end up getting sick of them after a few minutes of their constant bickering. Naturally, the generally negative fan reactions have forced the filmmakers to rethink these characters, to the point that their planned appearance in the next film was dropped entirely. Thank God.
Let's transform!
What's the worst human character you've seen in Transformers? Maybe that whiny, cowardly bastard who acts like a Decepticon liaison in Dark of the Moon. Or how about the annoying as fuck Daniel Witwicky from Generation 1? Or maybe it's the bland and one-dimensional Rad White from Armada. All of those things are worthy candidates. Although, for me, the one human character I hate out of all the terrible steaming piles of crap is none other than Kicker Jones. Where the hell do I even begin with this guy? Like your typical Transformers human protagonist, Kicker serves little to no purpose in the main plot aside from a Deus Ex Machina ability or MacGuffin. In Kicker's case, he has the ability to sense the location of energon deposits, which is an ability that is only brought up once in the first episode and is never seen again. The one thing that sets Kicker apart from other humans is his distrust of the other Autobots. Due to a traumatic experience he suffered when his father took an 8-year-old Kicker with him to Cybertron in an exceptional example of parenting. This seems like a good idea on paper, but this somehow translates into Kicker being whiny, angsty, and obnoxious as humanly possible. This naturally makes Kicker one of the most unlikable human characters in the entirety of the franchise. His distrust of the Autobots causes him to berate and badmouth them at every opportunity, and he even goes so far as to physically abuse his Autobot partner Ironhide. However, this distrust is also an example of the incredibly badly written and inconsistent plot of the series, as Kicker fluctuates between not caring for the Autobots and kicking Ironhide in the shins, and blubbering like a baby whenever one of them gets hurt. This would be funny if he wasn't so obnoxious. In fact, this fluctuation only really occurs in the early half of the series, yet it seems to disappear past the halfway point. This isn't a gradual thing, it just seems to be there one episode and gone the next, never to be seen again. Yet he still abuses his Autobot partner and acts like a whiny douche at every opportunity. Kicker is also a major control freak, and whenever something doesn't go his way, which due to his cocky and headstrong nature and his tendency to not think things through, happens more often than he'd like. It's not exactly once per episode, but it's such a common occurrence in the series that it might as well be. Anyways, whenever something doesn't go Kicker's way, he throws a temper tantrum and has what can only be described as a mental breakdown, complete with moaning, yelling, and crying. Given how often this happens and how whiny his voice is, you'll most likely find your ears bleeding and your head feeling like it's going to split open. It's no surprise that this guy is one of the most reviled human characters in Transformers history.
Let's transform!
I'd just like to say that you'll most likely disagree with this entry. After all, this entry is entirely personal, and this character will most likely not be your most hated character from the Transformers franchise. But anyways, let's get on with it. This character is none other than Thunderblast from Transformers Cybertron. Oh god, what went wrong with this character? From the moment that she first appeared on screen, I knew that I was going to hate her. For a start, let's look at her design. Oh boy. That's a little risque for Transformers, isn't it? The enemy is that Gonzo must not have taken enough cold showers that day. Thunderblast is basically an over-sexualized mess and stereotypical female villain. She has large round breasts that are clearly visible under her chest armor, complete with actual nipples that are visible in some scenes. I'd point them out, but you're probably staring at them. Plus I'd violate some kind of YouTube content filter or something. Thunderblast's transformation stock footage also adds to her status as a fan service character, as her transformation sequence is a reference to the classic drawing the curtain striptease, complete with her seductively blowing a kiss towards the camera. I am generally fine with fan service villains and fan service characters in general, but only if there's a decent character behind the fan service. Just take a look at Samus and Bayonetta if you want some examples. However, Thunderblast's character is incredibly one-dimensional. She acts like a stereotypical alpha bitch, acting really vain in regards to her appearance, is selfish and greedy when it comes to seeking power, is incredibly overconfident in her abilities, and believes herself to be superior to everyone and talks down to both her fellow Decepticons and her Autobot enemies. Thunderblast also has certain cowardly tendencies when it comes to combat, seeing as she prefers to goad others into fighting her rather than attacking them directly. This wouldn't be so bad, except Thunderblast taunting, complete with her extremely degrading voice, makes it just annoying to the viewers as well as the characters she taunts. She is also incredibly fickle when it comes to her allegiances, flip-flopping back and forth between Starscream and Megatron, with whom she aligns with depending on who she thinks is the strongest, which is the writer's way of saying that she sides with whoever she's attracted to at the time. This is generally a pretty bad idea because, as we learned in Beast Machines, adding in romance or flirting between the Transformers in anything is a bad idea. Oh no, I just had a bad Transformers Kiss Players flashback. Time to wrap this video up. I'm the Cyber Engineer, and Thunderblast is a completely broken mess of a character that definitely deserves my #1 spot. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.